Okay, you guys, welcome another episode. We got another remarkable story of success, comeback. Big homie TJ here. Came from criminal underworld. He opened up a recovery center. He's been running that for a few years. Now he's running a Gloves Not Guns program, working with over 200 kids here in Alberta in youth prisons, correctional centers. And yeah, let's fucking figure it out. That's what the sequence of events that led you up to this. Tell us what happened. Tell us about your your story. Like, how far were you involved, to whatever level of detail you want, in the criminal enterprise activities, and then what happened?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. Well, I really appreciate you having me here. Beautiful studio. For me, it started at a young age. I think a big thing that a lot of these kids don't understand is that trauma that starts at a young age and kind of unveils the criminal lifestyle, right? For me, I was an only child, so growing up, I always wanted to be a part of something. I always kind of felt like I wanted that connection, and I wasn't seeking it through my family. And then, a lot of things that a lot of men don't talk about. For me, that sexual abuse that happened at a super young age that turned me into that violent, angry, lost individual. And that was kind of the catalyst to how I started my life. That's the piece that it started with. And I didn't really know how to deal with that, right? And, my dad wasn't the guy that said, I love you, and gave me that connection. It was always really cold and kind of vicious. And when I experienced that abuse, he wasn't the guy that had my back. He was actually the one that kind of blamed me for it. 5 years old. How do you blame someone for that, right? And then just kind of moving forward, I was just always angry. I was always upset. I always didn't feel a part of. 12 years old, it was the first time I experienced alcohol. Big homie gave me a big bottle of mixed vodka, and I just chugged it and ended up in the hospital. And that was kind of the experience that started my addiction, I guess, if you will. And that was also the first time that I didn't feel pain, right?
Yeah.
So it was this feeling that I never had, that I could actually escape from what my reality was. 14 was the first time I was ever arrested. I did graffiti, and my mom fucking let the cop into my room and arrested me. So I was ratted out by my mom at 14.
Well, at least they didn't break the door down, right?
Mom. So she let him in, and then at 15, I was kicked out of high school for selling weed, and I was kicked out of my house. So 15, I was homeless with no education, and I fell in with some guys that organized crime, if you want to call it. It was kind of during that BC weed epidemic where they were trading pounds of weed for pounds of coke across the border. And I was 15 years old running a multi-million-dollar grow up, and that was kind of the introduction to everything. Everyone else is going to prom, and I'm sleeping with a shotgun beside my bed.
Yeah. So basically it was just weed, kind of, that was the big thing, right? So you're kind of getting coke down from the States, and you were flipping units, I'm assuming,
well,
right?
I wasn't. Not at this time. I was just running the grow up, right? So I was just watering the plants, looking after, doing a bit of security.
Okay, you were the big grow up. You were the big weed guy.
Yeah, okay, at 15, 16 years old, right?
Holy shit.
And, so I was making more money than my teachers. I started getting a little bit of a lifestyle and a little bit of a taste of that, adrenaline. And then I burned a lot of the bridges in the small town that I grew up in, and it was time for a change. It was time for me to grow up and figure out what the fuck I was going to do. And I lied about my age, and 17, I came to Alberta and started working on the rigs, right? And that was, growing up from a boy to a man before I was really, an adult, and, working minus 40, 12-hour days, all about it, right?
That'll do it to you, man, yeah.
And I started to build a life that way, right? And I did that for about 10 years.
Okay, bro. So what was the lowest point of that whole weed career? I know that your place got shut up at one point.
Yeah.
What happened there, bro?
So that was kind of fast forwarding. So, worked on the rigs for about 10 years. I had a house. I had, vehicles paid for. I bought my first house at 25. I was a driller, drilling on the rigs. Everything seemed good. And then 2008, the recession hit, right? And I went from making $150K a year, $120K a year to nothing, right? So then I had to figure out how I was going to, recreate that life and recreate being able to pay my bills and making all that lifestyle and that money. Riding a Harley, right? And started getting clicked up with, guys who were riding Harleys, right?
Club guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And that was kind of where I started getting introduced to that. And that's where I found the brotherhood. right? And that's
yeah.
where I found my calling, my purpose.
Yes.
And, you know, guys that for once actually had my back.
Yeah, which they do, man. They have a great organization. They are very organized.
Yeah.
Organized crime, right?
Yeah.
They are a good community. Their support is there, definitely from those guys. Always been. I mean, not the greatest, of course, fucking crew too, but you know, we all been there.
Yeah.
A lot of good friends,
Yeah.
right? Okay, brother. So, I guess your house got shut up. And what happened after that? Was that kind of the pivotal moment that you wanted to kind of?
Well, I mean, that wasn't even kind of the pivotal moment. So, you know, I was hanging out with the club guys,
Yeah.
started as, you know, a couple grams here and there, and then it started to, you know, moving bricks, and then it was a multi-provincial firearms operation, which I think we both know
We
about.
both were the cross
what
paths
happened.
there a little bit, I guess, that informant. There was this project for SETI where there was an informant from Saskatchewan. He was a president of that biker club there.
Yeah, Fallen Saints. I
Fallen
think.
Saints,
Yeah.
that's right. It was like a little puppet club.
Yeah.
And I guess he got busted with a bunch of guns, which were your guns that you apparently...
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And then he ended up just setting everybody up. He was a drug addict at that point. He couldn't take and he couldn't do any time. So he just set up a bunch of guys, bought some kilos of coke from me, set up a bunch of guys with them. And he wasn't even looking at that much time for those guns either. He would have been a year or two or nothing, you know what I mean? I believe he would have been out, but he decided to go, which, yeah, and now he's dead, right? So, yeah, he was in witness protection. That was a big thing. He was all over the news, too.
Yeah. So you know, that kind of unfolded, and then, you know, I was pressing some guys that owed me a lot of money, right? And I was kind of pushing to get that money back, and then, you know, next thing I knew, fucking boom, 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 right? 7 shots ripped through my house and a foot from where I was sleeping. And that wasn't even the pivotal point. You know, that's kind of where I thought I was untouchable. Then I started, you know, going around with the vest and the 9 everywhere, going to Walmart.
Yeah.
You know, the paranoia started to set in. And then I started really using the drugs that I was selling to escape again, to get out of that paranoia and to not feel kind of the pain and not feel some of the shit that I was doing, because I was really in a bad spot. I was hurting a lot of people and I was doing a lot of fucked up things, you know, and I almost suicide by cop. So I really didn't want to live anymore. I loaded everything up and I was ready to call 911.
Oh, shit.
And I looked down and I had this pit bull Ghost at the time. And, you know, I looked at him and he looked at me and I was like, fuck, this is not how I want to go out. Right. And I just broke down there and we both kind of crawled into bed, and I stayed in bed for 2 days and tried to refigure out what the fuck I was going to do. And then, you know, a couple days later, it was the same thing. I couldn't escape. I couldn't escape what I was doing. I was on house arrest. The cops were all over me. I was under surveillance. And I took my 9, I put it in my mouth, and I pulled the fucking trigger. And the gun jammed.
Holy shit, bro. Okay,
Right?
we
So,
have that in
we
common.
have that in common,
Holy
too.
fuck, man.
And
Unbelievable.
that was my moment to say, you know,
That's it.
What am I doing?
Yeah. What the
What
fuck
am
is
I
going
doing
on
with
here?
life? There's more to life. And that's when I started to, you know, get myself into a 12-step program and really started to look at the spiritual aspect of why are we on this earth? What are we here to offer?
Yeah, that's beautiful, bro. That's exactly what happened to me. What the fuck am I doing here? It's time for a change, bro.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 12 steps, great program. It does work. Wasn't never my thing. I did it on my own. I believe you did it on your own as well. So how did you transition? You did it on your own. How did you end up opening a healing center recovery center for?
Yeah.
for
So I moved back to BC. All my stuff was here in Alberta. And, you know, once I started to get sober and figure out that this was not the life that I needed to live, I moved back to BC and basically left everything behind and was living on my mom's floor for about a week. And I had a fitness business too. So I was making t-shirts and selling supplements, and I kind of took that with me and rebuilt that over COVID a little bit. You know, at first it was kind of a front, and that was kind of how I was, you know, getting by. And then, you know, the gangster gear and the stripper clothing and all that, it wasn't my purpose.
It wasn't, yeah.
Right. And it was cool at the time, but it wasn't aligned with my core values. And I was actually able to sell that, and I took all that money and I figured out that I wanted to help men through recovery and through recovery, spirituality, nutrition, and fitness. And I built a small treatment center out in BC called Coastal Recovery Community. It had 5 beds, and we took in guys and we'd do canoe journeys. We'd do indigenous sweats. We would take them hiking. We would do boxing. We would do Reiki. We would do art therapy, and starting to rebuild the trauma and rebuild the person from the inside. And, I never went to conventional treatment, but I built that center and I lived in there and helped about 50 guys through it every single day for about 3 years. So I basically went to treatment for 3 years.
Amazing, bro. That's a tremendous amount of work, man. That takes courage. And and of course you got some, of course everything was by the book with the recovery center. You got some funding and shit from the government. They approved everything, right? So I was thinking almost of doing something similar. I was in the talks with a bunch of guys that did get out of Stan Daniels here. Some lifers wanted to do that. They got the funding and stuff. So it still might happen, right? So that absolutely beautiful, bro.
Well, the government. So I never got any government funding.
Okay.
So that was the fucked up part, and the recovery industry is very corrupt when you look at the government and how it supports individuals. So just for example, in BC right now, a government funded bed pays $35 a day. Oh. You're supposed to house, feed, clothe, educate, and support someone in recovery for $35 a day. It's fucking impossible. That's why a lot of these government-funded centers are overcrowded, overrun, huge wait lists. So mine was private. So I started off charging, I think I was started at like $2,500 for a month. And I kind of worked up to, charging guys about 10 grand. And that was food, everything included. But still, it was hard to charge people that amount of money. I mean, I didn't even really make any money from that. But a lot of guys would come in and they would get 20 days, 10 days, and they're like, I'm fixed, I'm good. Right? Sometimes parents would pay and be like, can you just fix my kid? Here's the 10 grand. The kid would come for 2 weeks and they would leave. Right? So it's a really tricky situation. I think the government doesn't support people in recovery the way that they should. Some centers are charging $30,000 a month for people, and they're not doing any holistic work.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I hear about these centers. People go on a recovery journey and they go spend $30,000 for a month. They go to a place which is far the fuck away. There's nothing around. It's really easy not to do dope, but there's no fucking dope around. You're not allowed to use the phone or nothing. And as soon as they fucking come back, it's like, holy shit, they got to catch up to a whole month of not doing dope. They all bounce back. It's completely useless. Like they never get to the bottom of the problem. They never get to unravel the trauma. There's always a reason why people drink and use dope, right? To fucking escape. They're not happy with their achievements. The shit that makes them happy, right? For us now, I believe I'm in a place where, for me to have a drink, now it just slows me down. I don't like the way it feels. It just naturally happened to me, right? So to other people, it's childhood trauma. It's a lot of that too. It's like, for me, I carried so much trauma around for people trying to kill me, right? Like I thought that was fine, but then I had all these fucking pains, liver pain, kidney pains. I was in tremendous amount of pain, and I kept going to the fucking emergency. Like my heart would cramp up. I'm having a heart attack. I go to the doctor, and they're like, buddy, you're fine. And eventually I ended up with a holistic practitioner, and he's like, oh, buddy, you're just holding so much trauma. Your fascia is fucked. You're fucked. Yeah. It took me 2 years to unravel that. 2 fucking years. I went sometimes twice a week, 1 hour, 2 hours, a bunch of talk therapy, a bunch of energy work. I did the shit on myself. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, bro. That's puts you like aside from everybody else. Okay, so you ran that for about 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the gloves, not guns. How did you come up with that one, brother?
Yeah, so that kind of started. So basically once I was kind of done, and I was also watching the government with the safe supply, right? Handing out safe supply drugs, hydromorphs, Dilaudids like candy. And you got to help people build a life that they don't want to escape from, right? Anyone can go to treatment for 30, 60, 90 days.
Exactly.
But then when they come back to real life, if they haven't done the work and created that holistic environment, they're going to fall right back. And when the government's handing out the drugs like candy, it's a pretty easy line to cross that temptation. And I basically had enough. I was also up against all the red tape in a small community. So a small community that wasn't ready for recovery. It was a really harm reduction model. Harm reduction does work. I believe a lot of it is enabling. You have to have people keep that abstinence if they're really going to focus on being a better version of themselves or the best version of themselves. And, beautiful town, but there was also the ferries and not a whole lot going on. And I was just ready for a change. I was ready to do something different. Again, I found myself at a point where I was starting over with nothing. I kind of walked away from everything and rebuilt from the ground up. And I came to Calgary basically with, my Harley and a suitcase, and started volunteering and started speaking at events and started identifying the gaps in the system. And then I started to look inside myself of what do I really want to have as my purpose in life? What is it that I've been through that I can share with the world? And then it took me back to my youth. And I started looking at some of the youth who were incarcerated or didn't have positive role models or needed more out of life. And the gaps in the system were evident. And it was time to start filling those gaps. And martial arts was something that was always a piece of my life. It was always there. It never turned its back on me. Fitness also, right? It was always somewhere that I could go and channel that aggression, that anger, that sadness, that depression. The weights never lie, right?
Yeah.
And I started figuring out a way of how can I or we, a team, support some of these kids to find out how to challenge themselves through fitness and boxing. And all these kids think they know how to fight until you get into an actual environment with fighters and trainers and conditioning, and then everything changes and they start to build that confidence and see that the haymakers on the street, carrying the bear mace, carrying the CO2 firearms is just a reckless way to live, and it's not an actual healthy way to channel what's inside of them.
That's perfect, bro, because you actually got him here. Let's get him young.
Yep.
Fuck it, you know what I mean? We go to these. We just came from Edmonton, Young Offender Center.
Yep.
We did one in Calgary there last week or 2 weeks ago. And it's actually like, man, like I look at these kids and they're young and I'm like, holy fuck, that's good that you guys are here. You guys are fucking 17, 16. Great, Take this lesson now. Come out, you're gonna be fucking light years ahead of both of us.
100%.
Right? Like, and then like we fucking figured it out. We're doing things that are progressive and helping everybody. That's what it's all about. You gotta help. You gotta do your part. You gotta serve your purpose. Looks like you found your purpose, like I did mine. So we're working away on that. That's fucking fantastic, bro. Congratulations, man.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man.
No, and I'm glad you guys got to come see it. It's one thing to just explain the program, but actually going to the facility, going to the jail, see these kids channeling that aggression in a healthy way is something that, you can't put a price on. And, every kid that's there deserves a better chance. And there's no such thing as a bad kid. There's just bad environment, bad upbringing, bad support systems. And if we can kind of rewrite the story, who knows where some of these kids can go, and who knows some of the amazing things that they can do with the right people in their lives.
That's exactly it, because I think that I just see so much potential in that. That's crazy, bro. Like, I just see, and man, these guys hit hard. And like, fuck, today there was, I believe, a government official. There was an MLA, that's what it's called, right? MLA guy from one of the political parties. And we were, I think we might get some funding. You might get some funding from that as well, right? So you had some funding already for this program, some government funding?
Yeah. So we're a nonprofit. We're not a charity yet, but we are a nonprofit, and we get money through government grants. One of the ones previous was kind of a crime prevention homeless grant. We completed that project. The problem with that is we've built this amazing program. We have up to 200 kids that we support, 250 kids, between the two correctional facilities and in Calgary, because we are a sanction for diversion. So when kids get charged through either a CPR file or EJS file, which is either police charging them or the Crown charging them, if they come to our program, they get diversion and their charges get thrown out. So now we've built this program, and now the funding's run dry, right? So the program's over, and I just logistically and with my core intentions can't just close down the program.
No.
I've put a lot of my own money into this program because I believe in it. I believe in the kids. I believe in boxing as an outlet. But again, this is where I really have to look into the universe and trusting and manifesting and believing that no matter what, it's going to work out the way it's supposed to. Not necessarily the way I want it to, but the way it's supposed to. And good things happen. And I think we have some amazing supports, and we're connecting to some amazing people like yourselves. And sooner or later, something's going to give. I mean, our long-term goal is to have a couple facilities, one in Edmonton. So when the kids get out, they can come, not just do boxing, but have a place to do their resume, have a place to find work, have a place to learn about nutrition, learn about, spiritual principles, whatever that looks like for them.
Bro, that's crazy, because I'm connecting like in such a way to this. This is great, bro, because that's all these kids need as a support system. When they get out, because they get put. None of them. Some of these kids never had a fucking chance. That's all they know. Their parents sold dope. You know what I mean? They were fucking $10 bill slid under from the door, and fucking they're smoking crack for days, and they don't know anything else. They don't know any better, right? Well, guys like us come in there. It's one thing, you know, to talk to your POs. There's some great POs. There's some great systems, some programs in the system that are awesome. They do work, you know, but a lot of kids will get fidgety. They're not connecting. They don't have their attention, you know. And guys like us come in there, we'll fucking tear it up. We've been through fucking all this shit.
Yeah.
Pretty much. They do listen. They can see it in their eyes, right? They're interested in what we have to say. So, I mean, that's the biggest difference is what you give them tools to handle. If they just come out and go to the same circle of friends, and they do, it's going to be a drink in front of them and some coke. They're going to do it. They get into a fight, go back, right back. It's going to be changed. What you're doing is a drastic difference in their life. I believe that strongly. So super cool, bro.
Yeah, and I mean, it has to be collaboration over competition, right? We have to collaborate. We're a non-law enforcement program, so we take referrals from the police, but we don't divulge any information back. We don't give the police any information when some of these kids tell us some of the stuff. We help them, and if there's accountability to be had, then we'll, you know, assist them to take that accountability and face those consequences. But again, you have to work collaboratively with some of these social enterprise agencies that are trying to help these kids.
Politically correct way.
In a sense,
course,
and we're not tied or bound by any of the kind of red tape or systematic barriers that, you know, say the COs or probation officers have. So we kind of work in the gray area. But again, to get different results, you have to think outside the box. You have to have a different approach. And, you know, we can kind of go in some of those gray areas. Like I go in and sit with some of these kids who are, you know, charged with murder or attempted murder. And we can work on some of that healing piece because they won't even talk to counselors or therapists about their charges because they haven't been sentenced yet. So they don't want to divulge any information that could get them a longer sentence. Where when I sit with them, we can actually start to unpack about some of that trauma or some of the you know, results of what they have done and start to work on that accountability and almost reverse engineer what have happened, right? It's hard because the court systems or the police don't necessarily see that. A lot of these kids, to them, are just a number or a case number or a file number. But when you actually get to know them and know who they are and know that they regret what they've done, you know, it's a totally different perspective. I mean, we have that non-law enforcement gang exit program. It's probably one of the only ones. And we help individuals who want to exit safely. Our two stipulations are you can't have worked with the police, so you can't be known as a rat, and you can't owe a criminal organization money. If you do, we can look at, you know, maybe mediating to get some of that paid back. But not everyone's ready for that. We had a kid that was in there today, the kid that was, you know, talking about hitting the other kid with the pistol. And, you know, he even said, I don't want to be out of this life yet. You know, he's just not ready, and that's totally fine. That's up to him. He's got challenges, and he's got, you know, a hard road ahead of him. But if and when he is ready, then that's, you know, where we can step in and start to give him those resources. You know, and you got to look like, you know, some of the clubs or whatever that are around. They're not recruiting young kids. They're not going in and having these young kids do crime. They're not necessarily the ones that everyone should be worried about. It's these guys that are coming in and
we have no guidance, no higher
guidance,
ups, exactly.
Right? And they're scooping up the newcomers, and they're having, you know, these young kids do hits for both sides, doing murder for hire for both sides. You know, and we're not here to dismantle any gangs. We're not here to put anybody in jail. We're here to simply show these kids that there's a better way, and it doesn't have to be that way. And that there's also transferable skills from the experiences that they've had, that now they can start businesses, they can be coaches, they can be speakers. They can take that pain and turn it into a purpose for a positive life.
Perfect. Yeah, so, and then part of the thing, of course, you talk about nutrition, physical fitness, spirituality, right? So kind of like a quick breakdown, like what does that mean to you, bro? What is that whole statement?
Yeah, for me, so it's the 4 pillars. So recovery, so for me, I have to be abstinence, I have to be sober. That's the best version of myself, and then I can give that person to the world.
Yes.
Spirituality looks different for everybody. So whether you're religious, spiritual, it doesn't matter. That's your own conception of God, creator, higher power, Allah, whatever it is.
As long as there's something there that you know that there's something fucking greater than you. Yeah.
100%.
100%. Yeah.
And that's going to be different and unique for every single person. Nutrition, I always talk about it. It's not just the food that you're putting in the body, the supplements, the vitamins. It's what you're reading. It's what you're scrolling on Instagram. It's the people you're hanging around with. It's the influences. It has to all be positive or the result is going to come out negative. And then, of course, the physical fitness piece, right? The boxing, the gym, whatever it is, and helping these kids understand that they have to have a passion, whether that's art, music, fitness, being in nature, culture. They have to figure out what that is with guidance and then lean into that, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But having that amazing life, you have to have that purpose and that passion.
Perfect, bro. Seems like that seems very dialed in. You figured it out really well, bro. And I believe God, you're doing God's work here, bro. That's, pretty evident. And of course, I'm sure everything's going to get taken care of. People come, will sponsor. We can probably get some people involved from our circle of friends as well, from this side, right? We already had some guys offered us some kind of a help and stuff. So I'm sure we can put some money together. We'll talk about the numbers, I guess, later, see what we can.
And the
if anybody can want to donate, of course, we'll put some.
And if anyone wants to donate, they can donate e-transfer on our website, but it's not always about the money. Right? Donations or supporting our program doesn't always have to be a dollar value.
Yeah.
It can be a network. It can be connections. It can be opening the door. It can be, like you said, your buddy has a gym, sharing his experience and his education on nutrition and fitness. It can be stuff like that. It doesn't always have to be a dollar value. Yes, every dollar that's given goes to supporting these kids, but there's so much more than just money that's needed for these programs. And not only my program, the crime and the kids that are facing addiction, the kids that are facing adversity, it's not going away, right? The problem's getting bigger and bigger every day, and with everything that's happening with the government, we have to kind of just stick together to support these kids, because if we don't, who's gonna?
Who the fuck is gonna do it? Because these kids either gonna come out and become fucking, add to our lives and, making safe neighborhoods and become good people, give back to society. And that's up to us. We can do that. We can help them do that. So if anybody wants to fucking help in any way they can, they know that their neighborhood, their children are going to be safe. There are going to be more people around, like good people, right?
Yeah, and even coaches, if there's anyone who's, a professional fighter or an amateur fighter who wants to share their experience, any guys who have turned their life around and want to share their story, part of our program is giving redemption to guys like us who might not necessarily have a platform. We've had guys come in. They don't necessarily come into the jail, but guys come into our community program who are still on federal parole. No one else would let them share their story. And it's so valuable for the kids to hear that, but it's also a chance at redemption for them to repay their karmatic debt and to give back for some of the things that they have done. And it's part of their healing journey also. So it kind of, burns the candle at both ends in a positive way.
Yeah, karmic debt, bro. Man, that's crazy. It's... ever since I got on my healing path, when I started, I just completely fucking stopped doing shit. I get my karma is instant. I can't do fucking anything wrong. As soon as I do wrong, I get I get hit back instantly, bro, and twice as hard usually.
Yep.
So I'm I gotta be really good as fuck, especially when I started doing all the spiritual work. And holy fuck, God does not want me to do anything fucking. What does karma mean to you, bro?
Karma, to me, I can only experience some of the negative things, and it's kind of just like you said, right? If I do bad, bad's going to come back to me. If I do good, good's going to come back to me. I've been given a second chance a few times at this life, and I have to use that to do good. Because if I start to use that for negative or to do bad or even to be selfish for my own, egotistical ways, I'm going to be fucked right there. And everything's going to fall back or it's going to hit me in the face. So, my purpose is to be selfless. I obviously have to look after myself first so that I can be the best version to give it to these kids and give it to the world. But, I can't live by the same principles that I was living in my past life, right? And I know it. I know it because I can feel it. Even when I was, clicked up and doing all that stuff, I knew that my core values were not aligned. And I could feel it every day. It's like you said, I got major lower back problems. That's all from holding in that stress, right? Stress is the biggest killer that's out there, and no one really addresses it because it manifests in cancers and disease and all that stuff. But to me, the bottom line is that stress piece.
Yeah. That's so true, bro. And it takes some guts, to come to this point and be vulnerable and share everything that you've been through and take. So, bro, it's a lot. I respect that, man. You've done really well. It's very impressive. You've done a lot of work, bro.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, Joey, what do you think, bro? How was it? How was it today? Did you?
Yeah, it was pretty dope, man. See how like motivated these kids were to show up, put in the work. It was sick.
Because these kids, man, the today group, they fucking hit hard. They were all they all knew.
Well, I'm gonna
how
feel
to-
that shit tomorrow, bro. Like
You got some talent.
you know.
Yeah, they all hit hard. I mean, that kind of kept me what martial arts did for me. I went in and just went like 3 times a week, buddy, until my bones were out. I was constantly sore. My neck, this one time, I started having this something in my neck started swelling up, right? And I'm like, I can't swallow. Something's really weird. I ended up at the emergency eventually, and it's just the miracles that holistic practitioners do that nobody fucking really, a lot more people should know about this. In the hospital, they're like, oh, they gave me some antihistamines or something, sent me home, you're fine, did everything normal. And I'm like, buddy, I know there's something's wrong with my neck. I go to my holistic guy, my Chinaman, and he's like, as I'm explaining the story to him that something's going on there, he's already working on it. He already fucking knows everything, right? By the time I'm done telling my story, he's like, okay, I'm done. You're done. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? What just happened? He's like, well, you're doing jiu-jitsu. You fucking guys are choking you out all the time. I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, sequence of firing your muscles in the throat wasn't properly working. So your fucking food kept coming back up. I'm like, motherfucker, man, that makes perfect sense. It took him like 15 seconds to fix it.
Yeah.
And then never came back. And I had that for like literally a month with numerous hospital visits. Right? And that's what a lot of people, that's another thing, like holding that stress. It's all holistic. It's all got to be energy work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the conventional medicine is great. I break my arm, fucking it's amazing. Western medicine, couple of painkillers, they straighten it out, they fucking patch you up, you're out of there, right? But like everything that, bro, like it's crazy. That's very important stuff of healing is the energy work, right? Because we hold so much. All these fucking energetic knots that have to be untangled, right? Some are fucking from months ago, some are from 20 years ago, right? Ex-girlfriend, past shit, like fuck everything.
Yeah, the energy holds in your tissue, right? And your body will try to repair it as much as it can, but then if you get into this Western medicine stuff, they just want to prescribe when it just doesn't really fix the root cause. And it's it's kind of like dealing with these kids. We have to show up for them consistently because now we've come back. I think we've come to Edmonton about 4 times now. So we're starting to build a relationship where they trust us. Yeah. They look up to us. Mm-hmm. They're excited to see us. And, a lot of people don't understand that if you promise a 16-year-old kid who's, facing trouble and you promise him something and you don't show up, he will fucking never forget that. Right? Yeah. If you say that you're going to do something for these kids and you're going to be there, you have to show up and be there. Right? Because they don't necessarily get someone positive in their life who consistently shows up because they get let down all the time. And you just can't be another person to let them down because, these kids are our future. And if we don't invest in our future now, we're fucked.
It's true. They are our future.
100%.
It's a little bit tough in the correctional. They have the small pods and there's not much. I guess they do have a gym there, right? There was a couple of things like dip station and chin-up bar, maybe max. Yeah. Right? And they don't get to move around too much. So it's like short timers, right? We call them. They just do while they're waiting for a big trial. I mean, some kids are doing some
there's some serious stuff in there,
some
right?
Serious stuff in there, definitely.
And they hold on to a lot of guilt for some of that stuff. But just the fact that we can get them moving, get them boxing, get them talking about it is another huge piece so that they feel safe enough to be able to speak about what they're going through. Yeah. And that's half the battle right there. Yeah. If they can share what they're going through and say it out loud sometimes. And it always helps after a really hard workout, right? And just that's why I love to wear the bodysuit because those kids can just go and just unload, unleash, right? And they always feel better after, and it's moving that energy, moving that negative energy out, and you can kind of start fresh at looking at, okay, what does my next steps look like? What does the next plan look like? Am I going to do Fed time? Okay, how do I change my mindset so that I can prepare for that, right? How do I change my environment when I get out of here? That's a huge common thing with a lot of these kids is changing the people that they hang around with.
Yeah, that's important, bro. That's fucking huge.
And that's why a boxing gym or something is so important because it's that sense of community, right? The opposite of addiction is connection. And our whole kind of philosophy is connection over correction, right? Giving these kids a community where they feel safe, they feel empowered, they feel heard, and then they can start to move forward from that and get away from the norm, right? Because a lot of these kids, that's all they know is that criminal lifestyle. You got to break that cycle.
It's a never-ending cycle for some of them, yeah. Yeah, I like your plans for the future. 2 facilities, one here in Edmonton, one in Calgary for now. Maybe expand to Vancouver or something like that, right? Hire a bunch of holistic practitioners, you know, ex-lifers or whatever, guys like us, right, to work there and help out,
Yeah, I hate to use the term, but like a franchisable model that we can have in all the different cities and some of the correctional facilities across Canada, you know, is the 10-year vision that, you know, these kids, when they go in, they make a mistake. When they come out, they have somewhere to go.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of the kids that are brought in from rural communities around Alberta, they come into the correctional facilities. When they're released out into the urban area with no support, nobody, and that's where they're getting scooped up or recruited from a lot of these gangs and put into that life.
Instantly.
Like I said, we are a sanction for Calgary Youth Justice, so if we could replicate that model in different cities, because there's justice-involved youth across Canada. And then also the non-law enforcement gang exit program, so helping these kids get out of that lifestyle through a non-law enforcement lens and kind of keeping the police out of it, you know, and giving them the tools to be able to start a business and to be able to financially support themselves without having to dabble into that life. And then the education piece, right? We do presentations and workshops educating, you know, parents, staff, caregivers of these youth, kind of what are the challenges, what are the recruitment tactics, how these groups are scooping up some of these kids, just so that they can be more aware of it and connect with these kids on a different level.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right?
That's important, I think. Educating some staff.
The schools, right? The schools have no idea how to handle these kids. We're seeing a huge influx of newcomers that are coming to Canada. They don't know how the justice system works. They don't know how the police work. They don't know how to financially support themselves, and they're the easiest target to jump into these, you know, groups. And we're also educating the kids on what are your rights when talking to police. You know, remain silent. You don't have to say anything. How to access legal aid and legal supports. A lot of the kids think that when they are first charged and they go to court that they're facing a jury of 12 and that they're going to get locked up. And it's a long process of your first appearance, you know, your plea and all the different steps through the court system. So helping educate them on that so that they're, you know, at least showing up for their fingerprinting, right?
Yeah.
And not getting a warrant.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah,
right?
That's a fucking... It's funny how many kids just fucking don't do that.
Yeah,
and it's just like instant fucking warrant.
Well, because they don't know how, and then they get a warrant.
They're
and then they're out with
scared
their
or
friends,
something. They
and then
don't know.
get
They
picked
don't
up,
know.
right?
They're scared, right?
Yeah.
That's what... That's important. Never even thought about that, bro. Yeah, that's a good
And I mean,
point.
a lot of the parents have no idea. They come from a country where the legal system is totally different. The police are totally different. The court system is totally different. So, you know, we have different volunteers and different people that kind of help educate around that so that if they are in the system, they can at least transition smoothly. You know, and also keeping them from being known as a rat, right? Because that's another big thing, right? Is, you know, if you start giving the police information, you know, even innocently, that can come back and bite you in the ass, right?
Yeah.
Or your family, right?
Yeah. I'd rather do the time, buddy.
Yeah.
I'd rather do the time, right?
How is Karmatic Debt tied into your mission with your organization?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think for me personally, a lot of the things that I've done, you know, some of the alleged kidnappings and violence that I've done, I can never take that back, right? I can never go back in time. I can never change any of that. All I can do moving forward is give back in the only way that I really know how, and that's, you know, to kind of help some of these kids maybe not make the same mistakes that I have, right? And being the best version of myself, and again, sharing it with some of these kids so that they can figure out what the best version of they are. Right? And it's hard because, you know, it's 15, 16, 17, you want to party, you want to drink, you want to hang out with your friends, you want to have fun, you want to fit in, you want to be cool, you know, and the peer pressure game too can get a lot of these kids into some pretty sticky situations where one wrong move can affect them for the rest of their life.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen that, a lot of my buddies, One-hit wonders is what we call them in the pen. It's like guys just literally slap somebody trips back, they
Falls the
fall,
wrong
they
way.
fucking die. I had 3 of those in my range and in the pen, and it happens really quick.
And I mean, it's not just for them too, it's for, you know, the people who lose their lives, right? Because sometimes they're dads or fathers or, have, brothers or everything. So it's not just one person or two people that are affected. It's the whole epicenter of people that are hurt.
Everything trickles down. It's whole lateral violence type thing. You learn that institutional program, and they explain it to you. When you do that shit, you put that shit out in the community, right? Like you sell, an ounce of coke to somebody, that somebody gets fucked up, gets psychosis, whips out a gun, fucking beats up their old lady, or shoots somebody, or lights their house on fire in fucking state of psychosis, thinking the fucking aliens are coming to get them, or fucking God knows what, right? So,
well, and it's, the fentanyl too, right? The fentanyl's killing people at a record number. A lot of these kids are selling a bit of dope here and there. They don't know who they're selling for. They don't know who the higher ups are. They're all disposable at the end of the day, and they're selling stuff that they don't even know that could potentially kill, a lot of people.
A lot of people, bro. Yeah.
Right. We're also seeing a huge epidemic of these kids carrying CO2 firearms. So, you buy a CO2 firearm online for $130. You put it next to an actual Glock.
Can't fucking tell the difference.
Exactly identical.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple millimeters difference of length and
barrel.
weight.
If you take a look at the barrel, you can kind of see it.
Exactly. And these kids are,
cops are not taking their time to fucking look at them, buddy. That's
they
see a gun, bro. They're gonna act. They're not taking any chances.
There was a grade 10 that was just shot in front of his school in Surrey. A kid who was autistic, and he brought one to school, and he was shot and killed by the police, right, with a CO2 gun, right, and we're seeing a huge epidemic of these kids posting them on social media, right? Replicating the rap game and replicating some of the music artists that are, posting with real firearms. So they're wanting to do it to be cool. They're also using them to commit robberies, right? And they don't understand the consequences. That's some of the stuff that we try to teach them is, you pull a gun on someone, you don't know if they got a gun or not. And if they got a real gun and you pull a fake gun, guess what?
Yeah. Shit.
And especially with the police. There was that 16-year-old, you can watch a video where the cops are pulling him out of the car and he goes like this, and two cops just unload on him, right? You're dead. 16 years old, dead, right? Killed by the cops.
Yeah, bro.
Crazy.
Terrible. It's just this rap culture too that promotes that kind of shit. Half of these guys that sing about it, they've never even fucking been into that or used it at all. They just sing it because it fucking sells.
Yep.
And that's what these kids want to hear. Some of them do. I believe some rappers, I guess, do get caught with guns for fucking, like, they want to do that part to experience. I don't know why. They have money and everything, but they do end up there. But that's the thing. A lot of that, it's not even fucking real, right? It's not real. It's just the kids see that shit and they fucking copy it. So, I respect the rappers that put out the real shit out there, like our homie, trying to prevent that kind of shit from happening. But,
yeah, and it's the perception of social media, right? The kids that are walking around. It's the way that I compare it is the guys that are wearing, the fake Louis or the fake Gucci's and everything else because they're wanting to look a certain way. It's the same thing with the firearms, right?
Yeah.
They're wanting to look scary. They're wanting to intimidate. They're wanting to look like they have power. And, a Glock on the street's $5,000. You can order one with mom's credit card for $130 with an extended clip. The message is still the same. They're still looking like they're feared. They're still looking like they're, have power, capable of violence.
yeah, I used to roll around with a strap in a fucking secret compartment and stuff, and it does give you that sense of power, man. I almost got addicted to that feeling that you're powerful. Nobody can fuck with you. You can do whatever. Everybody's scared of you, bro. And it does get to you, man. It becomes like a part of you that you kind of like, you almost feed on people's fear. Right? You see somebody scared and you just want to scare them more, and you kind of absorb that energy when they start leaking energy.
Addiction,
what I mean? It's like I've seen a lot of that happen in prison too. Guys will just scare other guys just to fucking feed off their energy kind of thing, man.
But I guarantee you weren't out flashing around everywhere you go. You weren't posting on social media.
No,
right?
I was pretty fucking,
It was there if you needed it.
It was there if I needed it, right? Because, of course, I got a few times that happened to me that guys came for me, but... yeah, man. I'm just lucky I never fucking killed those guys that came after me too. It was a blessing too. So okay, bro. Well, some fucking final question, brother. What is some literature that you can recommend? What are some books that changed your life, bro? What was the some breakthroughs that you've read?
Well, I think we kind of have this in common. Like Wes Watson, right? When he first came out, I loved the guy. I loved his message. I read his book. I thought he was, I almost bought his coaching program.
I did, yeah.
And obviously, as we've seen over the years, that's really downgraded, and I think ego has got to him.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Obviously, The Secret is another really good one that I really like. Wayne Dyer.
Yeah,
is another
Dr.
really
Wayne
good
Dyer,
one that I
man.
love.
Yeah. He's
Right.
one of my. I started with him pretty much.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Rich Dad Poor Dad was another really good one that I liked.
Just the good old classics,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
all the classic ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
Nothing. There's only a few people that I ask who only has something completely different that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
But it's mostly all the good old classics. I mean, it's all the same shit as in the Bible. Been there for thousands of years. The same
Yeah.
shit all these guys relate to us.
Yeah.
Reinventing the wheel constantly.
And I mean, for me, also the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 12 Step saved my life. 12 Step did get me to a place of understanding who I was and healing my trauma. It's not for everyone. It's not something that I'm religiously going to all the time. It's always there if I need it. But reading that book, that was probably one of the very first books that I read through and through.
Okay,
because
then,
I
yeah.
wanted to change. I was willing to do anything to get some sobriety. And that book's, I think almost 100 years old, and it's
Yeah.
been around, and it's only, I think there's only 4 or 5 editions of the change, but that's kind of was my holy grail book.
Yeah, I'm not a big reader either, but when I want something, I will do it.
Yeah.
And you saying that that's the first book you read through,
Yeah.
that means a lot, So that's actually, the first book I read through was Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, how he explains what the chemical process takes inside your body when you get put in certain situations, and how you become reaction to certain things. They're just a shot of chemicals, it goes into your bloodstream, and that's it. That's you being taken for a ride after that. You don't think you're done, you're gone. Your mind is, and they just help me identify every little fucking pivotal moment before I snap. So that was a big fucking, oh my, that was just, it's not even me.
Yeah.
It's just the chemicals that go into my bloodstream that my body's addicted to. So it keeps fucking releasing them. And that was a big one for me. That's a fucking great one. Okay, brother. Well, fuck, man. Anything you want to add for your fucking program, whatever, some kind of a...
Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to check us out, glovesnotguns.ca, that's kind of our website. We're always updating that as we learn. There's no handbook or book that explains how to build these programs, how to work with
Yeah.
youth. We're still figuring things out
You
as
got to
we
learn.
go.
Yeah,
And, anybody who wants to get involved, get a hold of us. And we love bringing in new people and connecting and networking and sharing people's stories. Sometimes, people don't know when to share what they've been through. And I think, speaking to some of our youth is a non-intimidating, very empowering place to start.
I'm very grateful for
Right?
you fucking letting me be part of this, man. It's been really good. It's always been like it's just such a great addition to what I'm doing here already with everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like that's fucking perfect. When you reached out to me, I was like, fuck, right away. You just offered. I'm like, done. I booked 3 events with you right away. I was like, fuck, not even a question. I don't give a fuck what I have to do. I'll make it work. I canceled shit.
Yeah.
Done. You know what I mean? That was fucking perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that,
no
bro.
worries,
You know
man.
what?
I really appreciate you
I think
coming.
we're gonna do a lot more work together, and I think we're gonna get a lot more people involved.
Absolutely.
Here, and we'll
100%.
fucking make a difference. So
Yeah,
bro. Fucking thank you very much for coming,
thank you,
man. It was great,
really
man.
appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thanks for having me. Beautiful studio overlooking the city here, and
Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah.
thanks to Joey too for everything
sir.
you do.
Fuck
Putting
big
it all
Joey.
together.
Yeah, right on, bro. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm here
awesome.
for it, man.